Let's now shift focus to Europe. In about 3 weeks from now, it will exactly be 1 year since the war in Ukraine started. 1 year of turmoil and destruction. The question is, what can one expect from this war as it completes 1 year? Will it subside or will it get worse? If we go by Ukraine's version, matters are set to get worse. In fact, it says Russia is planning a new offensive. An offensive which will begin on the 24th of February, the very day this war started last year. What makes Ukraine say this? We don't know, but we can tell you who has issued this warning. Alexei Reznikov, the defense minister of Ukraine. He says that Moscow has amassed thousands of troops and could launch a fresh and more belligerent offensive to mark the anniversary of its invasion last year. Is there any merit to his claims? Well, one can't say that for sure, but what is certain is that the fighting is slowly going back to pre-winter levels. In fact, last week, Russia conducted a series of airstrikes in Ukraine. This week, Ukraine responded with counter-strikes. Let me start with these images. They are from the Donetsk region. They apparently show an artillery strike near Bakhmut. It was conducted by the Ukrainian army. The target was a Russian military outpost. And shortly after this, the Ukrainian president issued a statement saying that it has started operations to make Russia retreat from the battlefield. Have a listen to this.
Our defense and security forces, the Ukrainian government, our partners, we're all working together to ensure that Russia not only fails to win back on the battlefield, but that the occupier loses in its attempts for revenge, the last hope for aggression.
So is Russia retreating? Not really. If anything, it is responding with more attacks. And one such attack unfolded in Kramatorsk today. A Russian missile apparently destroyed an apartment building and damaged 7 more in the vicinity. Visuals from the site showing rescue teams searching through the rubble and using cranes to lift parts of the collapsed concrete. Reports say at least 1 person died in this attack and 20 others were injured. What explains this spurt in the attacks? I know the two sides are engaged in a war, but for the last few months, the war activity had slowed down. There were not many frequent exchanges of fire, neither any major air raids or missile strikes. And now, all of a sudden, the war is inching back to how it started. Why is this happening? We know the weather is playing a role here. For the last 2 months, the fighting had died down due to the winter. Heavy snowfall led to a minor ceasefire of sorts. It halted operations on both sides. And now that the ice is melting and mercury is beginning to soar, so have the number of attacks and counterattacks. That is one reason. Another reason is the West's decision to send tanks to Ukraine. Russia says this will escalate the situation. It will be seen as the West's direct involvement in the war. And what's worse, there are reports that Ukraine could now get longer-range missiles. The Kremlin says it has had enough of this, that if the missiles reach Ukraine, the tensions will, without any questions, escalate as well.
Пока никаких планов по переговорам Путина и Байдена нет. У нас главная цель – это продолжение специальной военной операции. Главная цель – это выполнить наши задачи, которые были обозначены главой государства.
And by the way, that's not the only warning that Russia has issued. The country's spy chief has also warned the NATO that its attempts to raise the stakes in this war are bound to fail, that they will fail to inflict a strategic defeat.
NATO is raising the stakes as they retain dreams of a so-called strategic defeat for Russia. But that is not going to happen.
Meanwhile, the Russian foreign minister has taken a softer approach. He says Moscow wants this war to end. But for it to end, the West must stop its geopolitical games. Its stubborn line that things never come to a conclusion. Listen to this.
From our point of view, the more effectively we explain what is happening in terms of geopolitical games, the sooner the world will begin to understand that this needs to end. And it needs to end when we see that they have stopped attempts too. Not even attempts, but the persistent, stubborn line from the West, led by the United States, to make sure this never ends.
You see, Russia's message to the NATO is quite simple. You want some, come get some. But the question is, has this message reached the NATO? Has it reached the White House? It seems like it. In fact, reports say the US president will visit Central Europe this month. What for? If we go by the remarks of the Polish president who made this announcement, it seems that the aim of the American president's visit will be to recalibrate the West's strategy on Ukraine to discuss how long this war can really go on for. I'll wrap the story with this statement.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are of course expecting a visit by President Joe Biden for the very simple reason that it has been announced. The President will most likely be coming to our part of Europe in February. We here are ready to talk with our allies on the topic of support for Ukraine. But I will say once again, we help Ukraine, but we also care about the security of the Republic of Poland.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.